But also this concept of power without wisdom and without the heart is actually can be very, very destructive, very dangerous, very harmful. Power coupled with wisdom is good, but neither of them are any good if you're not operating from the heart. I definitely had that notion, that like preconceived notion, that thing ingrained in me, conditioned in me, whatever it was, of like, your kids, hopefully they never leave. Like, that's the worst thing that could happen. The definition of love that I thought I knew what love was, completely changed.
Free to be me, free to sing, sweet feathers envelop me like a hug.
The Safe to Be Seen podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Darcy and Brandon Burke do not claim to be experts. We have no intention to defend our beliefs or impose them onto others. This podcast provides a space to allow for us to share with others what it's like to be us. We desire to share our human journey with others. We advise you to seek professional counsel, therapy, and/or treatment from trained, credentialed, and certified professionals for any emotional, mental, and/or physical conditions you may be experiencing. Welcome to Safe to Be Seen. My name is Brandon Burke. This is my wife, Darcy. Darcy, it's so good to be with you.
You too.
Thank you for sharing the space with me. On this episode, it's kind of a continuation of the previous episode where Darcy shared her journey leaving Mormonism as pertaining to her overall life's journey, not as a focus or a point of emphasis for this podcast is not Mormonism, but is just, we wanted to just tell that part of our story, and that's where we're at. So thank you for doing that. That was beautiful. Mm-hmm. And this episode will be my opportunity to tell a little bit about my journey that led me to leave the religion that I was born into and was an active member of for over 40 years of my life. So, but before we get into that, I thought I would share an interesting experience I had recently. And that was, I like to hike, you know, we both do. Mm-hmm. We love to hike. We live in beautiful southern Utah, and there's so many great places to explore and great opportunities, great weather to hike here. So it's one of our favorite things to do. And a couple of weeks ago, I was on a hike. I was alone. And I had hiked up to this cliff edge. I would guess the rock that I was on, the cliff that I was on, was 70, maybe 80 feet above the ground below. And I was doing a meditation sitting on that cliff edge when all of a sudden I hear a vibration sound. And my immediate first thought was, oh my gosh, is there a rattlesnake that's about to get me? So I'm in meditation, but I open my eyes up and I see right in front of me, I don't know, maybe 10 to 15 feet at eye level, a hummingbird. Hmm. And I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, there are no flowers around. Really not much of any vegetation of any kind. I'm out in the middle of the desert. And this hummingbird came to me. And I felt like we just kind of stared at each other for a second. It was awesome. And yeah, and then it buzzed off and flew away. But it reminded me, it was actually a very poignant and impactful experience, and it just kind of illustrates for me, kind of my evolution, because I think that old Brandon wouldn't have given much thought to that. Wouldn't probably have appreciated that experience, the significance of that, the visitation of that hummingbird. But a few months ago, I learned something that I love, and I'm going to share with you, is that, there's symbolic meaning and representation and so much to learn in this incredible planet, this earth, in nature, in animals, in the plants, in all of it. And a few months ago, I was taught by someone that I respect a lot. This person was teaching me about the symbolic meaning of the eagle, and that is power. But he said, the thing is the eagle representing power is nothing without wisdom. And wisdom is represented by the South American condor. And then he said, and the eagle and the condor, power and wisdom, are nothing without the hummingbird. Because the hummingbird represents the heart. Because the hummingbird has the largest heart of any animal in the entire animal kingdom on this planet, as measured as a proportion to its body weight. It's about 2.5%. The heart of a hummingbird is about 2.5% of the weight of its body.
Wow.
To give you some context, the human heart is about 1% of our weight, our body weight on average. And that, of course, is to accommodate the high metabolic rate of a hummingbird, how fast its wings flap and how it's able to hover and how it flies.
It's amazing.
It has a huge heart. And anyway, it was just a really cool lesson for me to learn about, I learned so much. I mean, how we can take from animals and nature and the symbolic meaning behind their incredible characteristics and qualities and divinity. But also this concept of power without wisdom and without the heart is actually, can be very, very destructive, very dangerous, very harmful. Power coupled with wisdom is good, if you're wise enough to know how to use your power. But neither of them are any good if you're not operating from the heart. And the heart, of course, represents love and compassion and empathy and forgiveness. And so anyway, just wanted to share that little experience I had. It was amazing. I actually I was doing a time-lapse video because I was, after I meditated, I did some yoga on that cliff edge, and I wanted to record it in time-lapse. And I was able to slow it down and take a still shot image of me and that hummingbird looking at each other.
It's such a cool picture.
Yeah.
That's so awesome you got that on camera.
Yeah, it was really cool, really neat. So I appreciated that. And I consider it a synchronicity, an honor and a privilege to have had that hummingbird come say hello and to remind me of my heart. So
that's so beautiful, Brand.
Yeah, thanks.
I love that. That's so awesome. Thanks. I used to not I didn't even know what a synchronicity was, really, I don't think. But now that I've opened myself up to this concept of we're all one, we are one with nature, and looking for the way that nature speaks to us and gives us messages of this unified divinity that we are all a part of.
Yeah.
And I remember, I guess was it last year we were seeing all of the yellow butterflies wherever we went. Last
year was the year of the butterfly for us. We saw them everywhere.
It was a yellow butterfly.
Yeah, monarch.
Literally, you took a picture of me on a hike, And in the corner was this butterfly hovering over my shoulder, this yellow butterfly. And then on another time, we were outside. I think we're in Angel's Landing. And a literal yellow butterfly, there was all these people around us, comes and lands right on your hand.
I held him her in my hand.
Yeah.
And a tourist, a passerby, took a picture of it and sent it to us.
Yes.
We have that picture too.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't believe, he's like, I had to capture that moment. Like that butterfly came and just landed right on your hand. And
it was so awesome.
like looked at you.
Yes. And then another time we were also doing a time lapse of us. And in the time lapse, we were sitting on this cliff and we were just talking. And out of nowhere, this little yellow butterfly starts flying around our head. We didn't even know it was there till we watched the video later.
Yeah.
And then also what's so cool was that last year is that when I had the opportunity to be a part of what's called a Free Wings retreat with Susie, and the whole theme was like free wings, the butterfly. And I don't look at those things as just like happenstance.
Yeah.
Like I see them as real messages, and the message behind the yellow butterfly is transformation.
Yeah.
And we were
evolution.
And we were absolutely have been going through a lot of that lately. So I think those messages, however you want to call it, messages from the universe, from God, however you choose to relate to that, are so powerful and so beautiful, and they have meaning behind them for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. Thanks, babe.
Yeah. Yeah. They're beautiful. If nothing else, they're beautiful reminders. I love what you said earlier, that we are all in this together. We are all one. We see what we see in others and what we see in nature, other sentient beings, animals, whatever they may be, is what we should be seeing in ourselves. What we do see, what we can see in ourselves, So anyway.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Today we get to discuss your experience with what your experience was like in Mormonism and your experience leaving Mormonism. And what that was like for you, and what your experience was like with that. So, I just start by asking the same question you asked me, Brand, is like kind of how, well, first of all, like you were like born, raised Mormon, served a mission. Tell us a little bit about like your upbringing and let's go from there.
Okay. Yeah. I born and raised by, small town, Utah, little town I grew up in, settled by pioneers. My family goes way back into pioneer heritage in the Mormon church on both sides. And, my entire life, my parents, my family, fully active in the church. My dad was my bishop at one time, and my dad served a mission. And like you referenced, I served a mission in Brazil.
What was your mission like for you?
Oh, it was awesome.
You were such a good missionary.
Thanks. If I was, it's because I loved it.
And I say that because we wrote each other while you were on your mission.
Yeah.
And so I would get letters every week. So that's not just coming from like, I was connected with you at that point.
You were. And you're maybe a little biased, but
I am a little bit biased, but you were a good missionary.
Thank you. I loved it. I had an incredible experience. I served in the Amazon jungle of Northwest Brazil. And Learned Portuguese, adored the Brazilian people, loved the food, had amazing companions, incredible experiences. I loved my mission. It was great. Mm-hmm. Super, super fun and adventurous and challenging, and it was a really cool experience. So, yeah, I loved the church. I had a great experience. I was fortunate enough to have incredible leaders, fantastic examples all around me. Mm-hmm. So many opportunities to serve and be served, and community. Mm. I loved it.
So why'd you leave?
Well, speaking of butterflies, well, I think I want to start with, we kind of talked about this in the previous episode when you were telling your story, but it's just really, really important to me to emphasize that this was not something I saw coming. Like, as I hope I was able to illustrate, I loved my membership in the church. I fully believed it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't my leaving, my change in beliefs was not something I'm a planner. We talked about that in the last episode too. I'm a planner. I'm strategic. I'm very, pay attention to detail, all that kind of stuff. I did not see this coming. I didn't want it, but it happened. And I think it started for me, I have to say, and keep in mind, a lot of this was very, a lot of people, the cliche, I think, is you put it on the shelf, right? Mm-hmm. You tuck it away, things that happen or things you hear or things you experience or things you read, and you just kind of, you don't want to go there. You just kind of tuck it away. You suppress it is what you're doing, really. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of this was like deeply suppressed. But now looking back, I see it. And it would have been, around 2017, 2018 for me, when I had a few experiences. And I also want to say, I'm not interested in getting in the weeds and like dissecting the details of doctrine or historical accounts or discrepancies in the history. I'm not interested in any of that. I'll just say in general, I had a few experiences that, my own personal lived experiences and experiences that I witnessed in people close to me, that started me for the first time ever just with the what I think is a simple notion of questioning the divinity, the direct line inspiration from God to men, basically. Like, I started questioning, like, is this system that has been given me since birth, that I've been told that this is God's way, like God, the Almighty, creator of the universe, has this one path, this one system, this one way to be happy, to be peaceful, to make it back to Him. And it comes through this line of inspiration, of revelation, of whatever, to men. And that's how this whole thing is ran. I had a few experiences that made me, for the first time ever, just kind of perk my ears up a little bit. And just kind of wonder.
Can I?
Yeah.
I spoke to my experience when Gracie came to us.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
Yeah, that was trying to think where that would have fallen. That was about the same time, right?
Yeah, I think so, actually. Yeah.
Because that was about 9 years ago, 8 years ago. So yeah, about 2017. You're right. It was all around the same time when our daughter came to us, and expressed to us, if you listen to the previous episode in Darcy telling her story, our daughter came to us and at around 12 years of age and told us, this church thing is not for me. I'm not buying it. I'm not doing it. I don't believe it.
Yeah.
And of course it wasn't a laughing matter. It wasn't.
No.
It was very, very heavy and very hard for her. And there were a lot of tears and it was very difficult. Which, by the way, she will be a guest on this podcast eventually. So I can't wait for her to join us.
Yeah, she's amazing.
I invited her and she said she would. So
yeah, we've invited all of our kids, actually.
Yep.
See.
So you'll hear her story in more depth. But basically, yeah, that, the funny thing for me, Darce, when that happened, that was another thing that was like, wait a minute. I was told, or at least the way I interpreted the message, my lived experience was, heaven forbid any of your kids ever leave the path. Like, that's like the worst thing that could happen. Like, it'd be better almost that they die prematurely than they like sin in deep, heavy ways, or that they leave the path and not believe and like leave the church, heaven forbid. Like, that's the worst thing that could happen.
Yeah.
And when Gracie came to us at 12 and we were experiencing that, I was like, it's not that bad. Like, I don't know. I just had this like
you weren't as afraid as you thought you should be.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
I was like, that's fine.
Yeah, you were fine. I was the one freaking out.
Yeah. I was like, she's my Gracie. Like, I really don't care if you go to church or not,
Yeah.
But I didn't know that until I experienced it. I definitely had that notion, that like preconceived notion, that thing ingrained in me, conditioned in me, whatever it was, of like, oh, your kids, hopefully they never leave. Like, that's the worst thing that could happen.
Yeah.
And then when it happened, I was like,
it's actually fine.
It's actually okay.
Yeah.
And my love for her hasn't changed one bit. These were the things I was experiencing, I was like, change is nothing for me.
Yeah.
I want her happy. I want her to do what makes her happy, So
yeah.
I know it was, as you, in an incredibly great way, described in your story in the previous episode, it was a lot more difficult for you. And I understand that and I respect that. And I saw that and felt that too for you. But for me, I was just like, it's okay.
Yeah. I'm glad you were that. I needed that.
Yeah.
I needed like some grounding at that time of like, Darcy's going to be okay, So I'm glad you were like that. Yeah.
Yin. You're my yin to my yang.
Yang.
Yeah.
Are we saying that the right way?
You're the yin to my yang. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We balance each other out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
So what after that?
Anyway, so I had a few different experiences that just started me questioning a little bit, but I kept going. I was fully active. I had what you may consider to be like pretty high leadership callings, priesthood callings, in leadership. And, yeah, I kept going.
What's like what are some turning points for you?
Mm-hmm.
Like some big shifts in that whole process of like, yeah, I can pinpoint like this moment of like.
Well, I definitely can say, and I know this is a common thing because I've talked, obviously I've talked to a lot of people since, and their story is very similar to mine in this regard. And that is when, so 2017-ish, we have Gracie come to us, our daughter. I have some experiences that start me kind of scratching my head about like, is this really being run by God? Mm-hmm. Or is this just a bunch of men
doing their best?
Yeah. Like, bless their hearts. They're doing their best. They're following the program. Is this really God though? Mm. And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit in 2020 and church was shut down, there was no more going to meetings. It was at home church, if you want, encouraged to do at home church. And, that was the first time in my entire life that I didn't go to church.
How long was that? I don't even remember.
How long did that last?
Was it a year?
I don't remember exactly.
I remember at least 6 months.
It was a while. It was a while. Yeah. But, all growing up, we went to church every Sunday. And then you and I, bless your heart, if we could be stranded on a desert island somewhere and Darcy would make sure we were going to church, even on vacation. Like, we would find a church to go to.
Absolutely.
Lake Powell, we'd go to church. Like,
I think there was also a good message behind that.
No, I'm not. Sorry, I don't mean to sound, I'm not like, I'm saying that.
We never missed church.
We never missed church. And it wouldn't have been that way if not for you. So that's all I'm saying. But when COVID hit and it was like, hey, no more church, don't come to church. I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. And I found that I didn't miss it at all. Mm. Not one bit. Like, if I'm being brutally honest, I enjoyed not going to church. I was like, this is amazing. Spend the whole day like with my family, no meetings. I was always, it seemed, in a calling that required me to be at meetings a lot of the day on Sunday,
Yeah.
And it was just such a relief to not have to go and do things. Mm-hmm.
We
it's
were still
interesting.
having church at home.
Yeah, we were still having church at home, which was awesome.
That was actually a really cool experience.
Yeah, I love that.
That was special. That was a special time.
We still have church at home every day now.
Absolutely.
Different kind of church.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'd say that was another thing that I'm like, oh, wow, this is a new experience for me. I've never not gone to church, and this is actually kind of nice. Mm-hmm. So there was that. But, pandemic comes and goes, and we head on back to church, and I went, I was still going.
Wait, I have a question with that. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
Were you feeling, did you expect to miss something by not going to church? Is that why you were shocked when you were like, were you expecting to miss feeling God or by not?
I think so. I think I was like, wait a minute. I actually I not only don't feel lacking by not going to church, I feel better. For me, this was my experience, you know? I'm not like going to meetings all day and like doing administrative stuff and like hustling and bustling and going here and going there. And, I know there's a lot of good in that, in the service, in the community circles that the church provides. Mm-hmm. But the fact is also there's a lot of, for me, there was a lot of time spent away from you and the kids.
Yeah, as me too.
And you too, yeah.
With my callings too.
So anyway, I think to your question, I was like, oh wait, I'm not going to church and I'm okay. And I'm better than okay, actually,
Yeah, okay.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think there was, I spoke in our first episode when we stated our intentions. I gave a little glimpse of my journey as it relates to my emotional and mental health, my depression, my constant striving and achieving and searching and seeking and obtaining, trying to like fill an emptiness within me. Like, and what's interesting, I think your question is a really good one, because it helps me realize that I was doing the same thing in my spirituality. This is just my experience. It doesn't mean that this is everyone's experience in Mormonism. But I was always trying to do work
to get somewhere,
or to like be enough, or to like prove my worth, or to like be accepted.
And that was just spilling over in all areas.
Yeah. And so anyway, this whole thing with COVID was very profound, because it wasn't just like, oh, you guys get a 6-month hiatus from church, don't worry, we'll be back. It like showed me, and I've talked to a lot of, especially men who felt the same way. It showed me that, oh, I don't have to do. I don't have to strive. I don't have to work. I don't have to always be proving that I'm worthy of my priesthood, or like going to meetings, or like,
Yeah.
It just gave me a break from all that.
Reset.
And allowed me to just be, and to like rest in that way. You know what I mean?
I think it did for a lot of people in lots of different areas of life. It was like a reset the world needed.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I got like, what was it, 6 or 7 weeks off work too.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
It was the best. It was so fun.
It was a reset in a lot of ways. You're right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So what would you say would be a next pivotal step?
For me, those things led me, perhaps naturally, I don't know, but led me to start to intellectually and cognitively look at things, read things, study things, deeply investigate things that I had never allowed myself to, or even really been interested in, because I had always been taught, don't look at anything unless it's church approved. That's anti-Mormon literature. You do not look at anti-Mormon literature. And it was, let's see, it would have been 2022. So 3 years ago was when I first started like studying parts of the history and the doctrine, doing all that intellectual work. And but when I do something, I go all in.
It was consuming you.
And so I spent several hundreds, if not thousands of hours. I don't know, but I spent a lot of time studying, researching, investigating, reading, listening, to like understand this whole thing that I had built my entire life around and constructed my identity upon. I started to see that it wasn't what I thought it was.
What was that like for you when you came to me and told me you were having doubts and concerns and fears? Like, what was going through you before that of having to come talk to me about that?
I was terrified. A lot of fear. I was scared that I was scared of how that might impact our relationship
Mm-hmm.
and what it might do to our family.
Mm.
And I was experiencing some, I guess I would identify as like, it was mostly fear, but there was a little bit of anger mixed in there that like, wait, like what? How is this? Like, I didn't know about that. I didn't know about this, like these things that I was learning.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I was a little bit like, and that fueled me wanting to keep learning and keep investigating and researching. And,
Mm-hmm.
but I'd say mostly it was, I was really scared.
Yeah.
Really scared.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly at number one, you and I and us, the family,
Mm-hmm.
our family.
Mm-hmm.
But then also like I started, experiencing fear around like, what will others think of me? Judgment,
Mm-hmm.
fear of judgment. It was really scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious, Brand, like, what is it like? I mean, I know what it's like being a woman in the church. What is that like? What is it like being a man in the church and having those responsibilities and that authority and that, yeah, I'm just curious what that's like. And maybe if you want to speak to kind of what men experience as far as like shame or, we've talked about this so much.
Yeah.
If you want to share some of that.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting for me, Darce, is there was the intellectual or if you may call cognitive, like deconstruction, the understanding of things in my mind that happened, that was painful. That was like, whoa, this isn't what I thought it was, that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that led to like, well, I don't believe this anymore. But then that opened up like this whole nother world to me that I never saw, which was beyond the issues with doctrine or the stories not adding up or the historical accounts not making sense or whatever you want to get into and that stuff. I started to realize like a few things that were, I would call much more deep spiritual impacts of my journey. And that was that I had completely, like the idea around, we throw out a lot of fancy terms, but cognitive dissonance, where like things just don't, you have to kind of like make it work in your mind. You have to like force it. You have to like do mental gymnastics, they say, to like make things make sense, or something like inside you is like, that doesn't seem right, or that, but you go against that inner knowing, that intuition, and you do it anyway, or you think it anyway, or whatever. That dissonance that you experience, that started to become very apparent. I was like, wait a minute, that's what that was, or like understanding that I had outsourced my entire life in my spirituality. I had outsourced it. I had given away, so to speak, like my inner compass. Like I didn't really understand until then that I was like, wow, I have like literally like whatever the prophet says, I do it. Whatever the stake president, the bishop, the mission president, whatever it was, you know, I do it.
Without questioning.
Yeah. So I started to like realize that. And I started to realize that a lot of feelings, emotions, really just parts of being a human had been suppressed deeply, which I came to understand as spiritual bypassing, you know?
Yeah. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah. So that just means that like normal, good, healthy human emotions, part of this human experience, are either prayed away, like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling that. That's not something a worthy priesthood holder should be feeling or experiencing. I'm going to just pretend it's not there. Or like push it away, suppress it, distract from it, pray it away, ask God to take it away, give it to Jesus. Let's fast. We'll fast more. We'll go to the temple more. Well, you know, all these things that you're just like, instead of like facing the emotion, like witnessing the emotion, which now I know how to do and what's so important. Such an important part of my spirituality is being with what I'm feeling and accepting it and witnessing it without judgment and just knowing that it has a message for me.
Yeah.
It has something to teach me. It has something, there's a reason, you know? So that was something that all these other things started bubbling up to the surface for me of like, whoa, this is like way deeper than I ever knew. I just felt like I felt like a butterfly. I felt like I had been this caterpillar that I had no idea why. I truly don't think, I could be wrong, but I don't know if a caterpillar necessarily knows its destiny is to become a butterfly. Interesting. Maybe it does. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
We can't interview a caterpillar. Maybe it's something scientists can tell us, but I wonder if maybe the caterpillar just all of a sudden is like, I don't know what's going on, but I need to make this cocoon. I need to go inside this dark, cold thing, encase myself in it. And then it just starts like literally melting into like this goopy, slimy stuff. And it's, who knows? It's just surrendering to what is.
The process.
The process. I don't know if there's fear for the caterpillar. I don't know if there's excitement. I don't know, but something very difficult, like it's literally melting away.
Yeah.
From what it was. And scary probably, I don't know, but like I felt like that. And then I didn't know at the time, like this came much later, the cracking out of that cocoon, you know, and
yeah,
that chrysalis, and
it's a beautiful analogy.
Looking at you're like, whoa, I have wings. What? I used to just like crawl around and like, you know, how caterpillars do, and now I have wings? What?
Yeah.
But yeah, in that phase of like starting to like melt into a goopy, slimy something that I don't know what's going what is going on here. I felt like I was dying. I felt like I was like It was really hard. Your question about like how it is being a man, I think that I realized too that I had a lot of shame. This is, again, I can't emphasize enough, this is my experience.
Yeah.
I don't pretend that this is everybody's. But I have talked to a lot of men in the last couple of years since leaving the church who have expressed the same sentiment, for sure. It's very common. But the notion that like we are given this priesthood power, it's something like outside of us that is given to us, but that we better watch ourselves because we have to be worthy of it. Like we have to, even if we administer, this was my experience. This is what I felt.
Yeah.
If I were to administer something, an ordinance or a blessing in the name of the priesthood, but deep down, if I was like, I don't think I'm worthy, was that whatever I administered even valid? You know? Or was it
pressure?
Or was it just all a show? Was it just all like, you know?
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm a human. And I definitely like made a lot of mistakes. And what
we were just
what were
human.
What were considered mistakes, what I thought were sins and like things that made me unworthy. That's a lot.
A lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure, a lot of like, ultimately it leads to shame. It leads to like, you know, a lot of shame in like not quite measuring up, not quite being enough. I think for a lot of men, and I experienced a lot of that.
Yeah.
You know, oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I can't wait to talk down in future episodes more about how we practice spirituality now. Yeah. But I would like to rein in the focus right now of helping navigate this space between people who leave and people who stay and those relationships, because that's what we want to try to help bridge that gap between and help heal that space. And I'm curious, Brand, if you were to have somebody come to you right now and say, like, my wife is doubting, she's struggling, she doesn't believe anymore, she wants to leave, or my child, you know, what would be advice you would give them on what would be helpful to say to maintain relationship and to maintain relationship? Having gone through it with a daughter, with yourself, with me, what would be the most helpful advice that you could give to somebody to help maintain connection and relationship?
Yeah. I would simply, I mean, if you want to stay on this, you know, keeping this sphere of like religion and spirituality, I would use the words of Jesus Christ, which means, what was his main message was to love. He said, "A new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another. As I have loved you," he said. Love one another. And that's another really, oh man, I mean, we'll get into this in future episodes, right? But one of the things I started quickly realizing, Darce, was the definition of love that I thought I knew what love was, completely changed.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm getting at is, if someone were to come to me like you just described, see, love has no conditions. True love, no expectations, no strings attached. No fear. People sometimes think the opposite of love is hate. No, you know what the opposite of love is? It's fear. And so I would just advise them to, and it's not like a quick fix. It's not like, oh, okay, that's easy. But I would tell them, just love them. And they might be like, well, I am. I do. Do you have any fear? Do you have any conditions? Do you have any expectations? Do you have any need for reciprocity? Ask yourself those questions, because love has none of that.
So good. What would be some helpful language that they could use of, like, don't say this, basically, because this will make them feel more shame and more judgment.
Yeah. I'll tell you, at the top of my list, I have to chuckle because this happened all the time to both of us. Don't say, it's okay. I'll pray for you that you'll come back. I know you'll come back. Or anything along those lines.
And why?
Because it bypasses my experience.
Not being seen.
You might as well just say it. You're telling me that I'm wrong. It's okay. You'll be back. I'll pray for you. Well, you're just saying you're right and I'm wrong. It's okay. You're just going through a rough patch, but you'll be back. Anything like that? Like, I know you mean well. I do. I trust that those loved ones of mine that said those kind of things to me meant well, but like, you have to understand, don't say that. You're just saying to the person, boy, you're a mess, but hang in there. You'll get better. It's like, no, you don't understand. Like, this thing that is happening to me, this metamorphosis, this evolutionary change, this melting down into a goopy, gobbly goop, slimy something that is destined to become a butterfly. It's happening. I didn't choose for it to happen. Like, I'm not, I didn't look for this. Like, I didn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. That's helpful. Anything else? What could they say instead?
Well, just like I said, like, if you're coming from a place of true, pure love, you're simply there's a million things, but one example is you're just going to wrap your arms around them and say, it's okay. It's okay. I'm here for you. I see you. And it's going to be hard. And I am here for you.
Yeah.
If you need anything. Without judgment. I don't know.
I think something that would have been helpful is language like, I'm curious what that was like for you.
Well, because
tell me more about your experience.
Because that's language that clearly demonstrates that you're interested in, like, you want to see them.
Yeah.
The thing is, so fear is the opposite of love. You know what the opposite of judgment is?
Curiosity.
Curiosity.
Yeah.
So when you can, it's so easy to judge because it requires no thinking. It requires no, all it is a projection, a vomiting up of what you've got inside of you, your limiting beliefs, your fear, your dysregulated nervous system, your trauma, your wounds, projected onto another human being. That's what judgment is. If instead you can replace that with curiosity of just, what's that been like for you?
Yeah.
Can you imagine how that would change the world?
Changes everything. That type of language breeds connection, not separation.
Yeah.
You know, and I understand people who, they don't want to talk about it because it's too hard for them. And I think it goes both ways of like us respecting that in other people.
Sure.
So like when people ask about my experience with leaving, I always kind of put in there like, I would really like your consent before I speak to this because I understand that this might be hard for you to hear.
Yeah.
And I understand.
Yeah.
And I don't have to go there with you, you know? It's, you know, how, depending on how deep we want our relationship to go and to have a really deep connection, I understand I'm not going to have that with everyone. And I don't need that with everyone, you know? And so I think it goes both ways of like, yes, we want people to see us, but are we willing to see them?
Yeah.
You know, and see their pain and their hurt and their fears. And I do, because I've been there. I know what that feels like to be them too.
Yeah.
So I understand. I see that. And so I think having this conversation of how to appropriately see each other and handle those tough conversations that breed connection, not separation.
Yeah. I want to tell a quick story.
Please.
When I was kind of really in the middle of my, if you want to call it a faith crisis, I prefer different terminology, but we'll just call it a faith crisis for now. When it was really difficult and dark, there was a gentleman, an older gentleman in our ward at the time, who had previous to that always shown interest, like been a really nice, friendly guy at church, and had actually on a few occasions said, "Hey, Brandon, I really want to get to know you better. I want to hang out. Like, let's hang out." This gentleman, like, he's way older than me, like twice my age, but really cool guy. And so I always like wanted to do that. But then, you know, I went through this faith crisis and all this transition stuff, and was just really in a tough spot. And so it kind of got put on the back burner. Anyway, one day I came home from work. I had nothing going on that night. You and the kids were gone. I think I was home alone. And so I was like, I'm going to call this guy up and see if we can hang. So I did. And he was like, yeah, come on over. Lived right down the road from us. So I went over, and anyway, he started kind of talking to me and questioning me about like my beliefs and why I wasn't going to church and like what were my issues. And I expressed a few things to him, and he just wanted to argue. Like, he just wanted to prove me wrong. He wanted to he told me, you know, you're wrong. You're wrong. Like, everything was a rebuttal. It was an argument. It was to the point, Darcy, where we were sitting knee to knee like this. And I stood up and I put my hand on his knee and I said, I'm going home. This isn't you. I said, you told me you wanted to be my friend. This is not being my friend. That stung. Yeah,
it's hurtful.
And so I got up and left. And then the next night at my doorstep was a big manila envelope with a handwritten letter and a bunch of documents inside that this gentleman had. He had written me a letter and he had included a bunch of like photocopied things out of books and magazines or whatever about. And in his letter, he said basically, hey, I did you the favor of researching those issues you talked about that are keeping you away from church. Read these articles. These have all your answers in them. It's very important that you do this. And I never read them because, you know, I didn't feel seen by him.
Yeah.
I didn't feel seen by him. And then, you know, sorry, finishing up, you know, there was an event a month or so later that we were all at. And this gentleman came up and approached me and said, hey, I just was wondering if you got those materials that I left on your doorstep. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, I did. Thank you. And he said, well, did you read them? And I said, actually, I didn't. I said, you know, it's like I told you when I was over at your house. You said you wanted to be a friend, and all I felt from you was judgment. And like trying to prove me wrong, trying to prove you're right. I said, I'm not interested in that. And that's not friendship. And he said, you know, he kind of pointed at my chest. He said, a friend is someone who tells you when you're wrong. And I was just like, man, I want to be seen. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be told I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Anyway, that came to mind when you asked, like, what are some ways that we can, because what ultimately we're trying to do here with this space, with our telling of our story, with this podcast, is to heal. We want to provide space to heal. We want to help people feel safe to be seen, tell their story, and heal. Mm-hmm. So in this regard, you know, we've been on both sides of the aisle. Mm-hmm. And now that we're on this side, we hope that we can help both sides come together. There's just so much unnecessary suffering and judgment and division and separation.
And we see him too.
Yes.
Because he was just trying to love in the way that he thought was love, that was best. Because his way was how he had found love and connection and truth, and he wanted that for you.
Yes. And I agree. And here's the thing. I used to be like that.
Yeah.
So I
understand.
I understand. But that in that moment when I was going through that hard time and I was like just following my heart, I don't think that I wouldn't handle things that way with a loved one or friend who is going through a transition like that.
Yeah.
But I've certainly been like that in my past. And you're right. I see him. I understand. Like here's the thing. Everybody makes sense. Right?
Yeah.
And we'll get into all what that means in future episodes. We'll get into these different aspects of why we are the way we are and why it all makes sense. Because you don't know what you don't know, and you cannot see what you don't see until you see it. But I guess it just has to come from a place of love. And I'm fine with, like you make a good point, Darcy, and that is that he had his beliefs, which he told me, he basically bore testimony to me. Like, I know that these things are true. And I was like, that's great for you.
Yeah.
I know they're not true.
For me.
And he just kept saying, well, you're wrong. And I realized later, perhaps not at the time, I may have been too clouded by frustration, but later I realized it's okay. Like, whatever beliefs you have, that's okay. I think the important thing to understand is, what is your attachment to those beliefs?
Yeah.
And we'll get into that in future episodes too. Like, what does it mean what does attachment even mean? And in fact, that's a good segue and probably a good time to end this episode. Do you have any other questions for me before I do?
Well, I have a lot, but we'll get to those later.
Okay.
But thank you,
Yeah.
Brad, so much for sharing part of your story. I know that it's definitely not all of it, and there's such sacred parts that are for you to hold within yourself. But yeah, I just having been a witness to your story and to that experience, what that was like for you. It was like I saw how hard that was for you, and the struggles that you went through, and the fears, and I'm just so proud of you for how you came out of that. So proud of you. I mean, it wasn't easy. There was some ugly moments for both of us. But the work that you put into rebuilding yourself is incredible. I am so thankful for that. And you were such a strength to me and a help to me during that time. And I'm grateful that you didn't judge me during my times of struggle. And we're really lucky that we had each other during that time, because a lot of people don't. And we can speak to in the future what that's like too. But because it's so hard. So I'm grateful to have you, babe.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
You're very welcome. And I'm so grateful for your support, and you were always there for me. So thank you. I sincerely appreciate your love and support.
Welcome.
So yeah, our next episode will just lead right into what I was talking about before, and that is attachment versus authenticity, and how attachment is not just to things or to people, but it can also be to beliefs, and how to work through understanding and living from a place of authenticity versus attachment, and how that plays out in our lives. We'll talk more about that in the next episode. So thank you. Do you have anything else to add, Darce?
No, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you. Have a great day.
Free to sing sweet feathers and melody like a hug, whispering melodies.
The Safe to Be Seen podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Darcy and Brandon Burke do not claim to be experts. We have no intention to defend our beliefs or impose them onto others. This podcast provides a space to allow for us to share with others what it's like to be us. We desire to share our human journey with others. We advise you to seek professional counsel, therapy, and/or treatment from trained, credentialed, and certified professionals for any emotional, mental, and/or physical conditions you may be experiencing.